Governor Ventura, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you back on. As I mentioned the first time that you were on this last fall, since I started this show, I wanted to have you on as a guest. You're a hero of mine, and you bridge the world between politics and wrestling. When you were on last time, we actually talked a little bit about Hunter S. Thompson and your time in the Mongols, and just you've had one of the most interesting lives of any of the people who've been on my show, so I really appreciate you being back on.
Oh, no problem. And by the way, I've kind of reunited with the Mongols. By a chance meeting in the far reaches of the freeway in Arizona.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and we ran into each other. You know, who could think? That'd be like winning the Powerball, you know, the odds of that. So I kind of felt it was destiny. So I'm back with the club, not officially, but we had our 50th anniversary last December, and I went out to California to celebrate it, and 50 years of existence of the motorcycle club.
Wow, that must have been a fun time.
Oh, phenomenal. And then I went on their run, too, in Palm Springs, their annual big one there, and one of the most fun times I've ever been on. They rent the entire Hilton Hotel, and I never felt more safe in my life. I felt safer there than I did when I was governor.
Well, Governor, I wanted to have you back on the show today because there's been a lot of conversation, especially recently, about you potentially running for president. So I just wanted to ask you point blank, are you going to be running for president this year?
Unlikely, very unlikely. The problems arose as, because I live in Mexico in the winter, and I have my own strategy when I run for office, and I'm not very, shall we say, I don't like to change my personal strategy when I make a decision. And when I went to Mexico this year, that's what I did for 3 months, was think it over. And when I came back, I felt that in which to get in this race, if I did get in it, I needed a clear path to a nomination. I didn't want to deal with any type of primaries or any of that stuff, because I didn't have to deal with that in Minnesota when I ran with the Independence Party for governor. And at my age now, I got enough to take on the Democrats and Republicans, but I don't have enough energy to go through a primary before I have to do it. Follow me?
Sure.
So I indicated, I've been talking to the Green Party, and I indicated those desires. Plus, to me, it's part of strategy. You don't want to name your candidate early. Before, when you have 12 Democrats up there and all that, wait till they get down to the final two, which now they have. We know who it's going to be. It's going to be Trump. It's going to be Biden. Well, then you wait, because the longer you wait, the more these two will alienate the public. And then when you come in the 11th hour, you'll be seen like the knight in shining armor to save the country. And that's the political strategy. So the later, I tried to tell the Green Party, the later you wait, the better, especially if you come in with someone like me who has name recognition, someone who's going to jilt the system at that point. And then you only because if you come in too soon, mainstream media will give you 1 day of press, and you'll get lost in the shuffle. Never hear from you again. But if you come in like at the end of July, you only got to carry it then for 2-3 months to maintain the media coverage on you. And so explaining all that to them, unfortunately, they have a process that they will stick to through thick and thin. Like my argument was, look, if you want to become a player, you may have to bend the process a little in which to do it. You need a face to your party. Someone who, when they look at that face, they recognize that face with the Green Party.
Absolutely.
You don't have that. You don't have it. I offered it to them to be the face. And they told me I would have to go to the convention, and then if Howie Hawkins did not get 51%, the delegates would then be free, and I would win in a landslide on the second ballot. Well, that sounds lovely. But the problem is I'm 68 now and I have experience. And I remember back in the 90s when I was affiliated with Ross Perot in the Reform Party. In 92, Perot did a remarkable job. He got nearly 20% of the vote across America, probably could have got more if there hadn't been the glitch in his campaign.
Right.
Okay, 96 came. We felt, okay, let's show the world that we're not just Ross Perot, a rich guy from Texas, that we're a legit third party, growing and expanding, so we'll be legitimized. We got three-time Governor Dick Lamb of Colorado. He was going to be our nomination in 96. It went to the convention. At the 11th hour, the Perot people came in, cut Lamb's legs out from underneath him, and Perot became the nominee again. So I had paranoid about the convention. Plus, every one of my people that I talked to that I truly trust in the political arena told me that was the major red flag.
So could you go into at all who you spoke with at the Green Party and who was?
No, I will not.
Okay.
No, I'm not here to I'm not here to trash the Green Party. I wish the Green Party all the best. I want them to succeed. But, unfortunately, there's reasons within internally where they're having a tough time of it.
Right.
And I won't go into that. That's their business. I don't want to badmouth them in any way. I think, the only thing I will say, and this bothered me greatly, was that there was response back asking the question if I was one of them. And I got offended greatly over that. My first question back was, what is one of you? What do you mean, am I one of you? And my point being is, my two most critical issues right now to me, personally and politically, number one is pollution. And I use the term pollution because that's something everyone understands. And that encompasses, of course, global weather change. That's part of pollution because it's caused by pollution. So I take the position of pollution. People get that. And my other position is I am extremely anti-war. Well, shouldn't that be enough for them?
You'd think so. The reason I asked
think those two major positions are right in line with them, and yet there was question out there whether I would. And I've run independent. I've never been a part of the Democrats or Republicans ever, and I've beat them twice. I'm undefeated against them, and yet they would question whether I'm one of them. I was offended by that.
So I certainly support the Green Party too, and this show has been a friend of the Green Party. I've actually had every single former Green Party nominee on the show at least twice, I believe. Actually, Jill Stein's been on 4 times. So obviously, I have a great interest in the Green Party. Something that I've discovered in covering the nomination process this year is that there is warring factions in the party, and there's been a lot of controversy over how they've been pursuing a nominee. There's been candidates who've actually spoken out about that. Actually, one of the candidates, Ian Schlachman, has actually dropped out in protest of how it's been undertaken. You did mention Howie Hawkins.
Good. I'm glad you said that and not me. Because everything you're saying I understand, but it wasn't my place to say it. I'm glad that you did.
So you mentioned Howie Hawkins. Are you familiar with him and his campaign? And
not particularly. I didn't go in that deep, into it. It happened. And here was the other thing that people need to understand clearly. If I would have announced candidacy at the moment I announce it, I lose my job. And I lose my health insurance immediately.
Right.
And I have a health issue that we're in the middle of right now, early June. If in that and in of itself, if it's negative, would remove me from ever being a candidate. If it's positive, then it opens the door. But I couldn't make that decision until the latter part of June over that health issue. Plus, how would I look to a voter at a time when you have unemployment at record levels since the Depression? You have gigantic amounts of people in this country that have no health care, and they see me make a decision to give up my job and health care for an unknown. I think many people would question my sanity.
Would you be receptive, though, to, on the health insurance matter, if somebody was to set up a GoFundMe in order to take care of your health expenses?
I suppose, but, they talked about that to me. They said, well, we can take care of all that. You can get paid for campaign contributions. Well, that's fine and dandy, but you know what? That's very distasteful to me. People give a campaign contribution for a campaign or to contribute to a candidate politically. I don't think the candidate has the right to use that as an income or to use it in other manners. I know it's legal to, because they tried to tell me, well, we can get you COBRA insurance, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but how long is that going to take? I've dealt with these insurance companies, and, you can change insurance and it could take 6 months or longer for things to get straightened out. I don't have that type of luxury right now. And besides, and to me, it's personally distasteful. I don't want to use campaign contributions to give me an income. When I ran for governor of Minnesota, I told them right at the get-go, I said, if you expect me to spend my own money, you're crazy. I said, here's what I will contribute. All through the state of Minnesota, I'll drive my own car. I'll pay for my own gas. That's my contribution. And when I ran in Minnesota, we only raised $300,000. We used it all basically on television ads, because you got to be on TV to be considered legitimate. And we won. So to me, money and all that garbage, you don't win because of who's got the most money. Money can be defeated.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. On the health insurance matter, though, I do have to ask, because I believe last time you were on the show, you mentioned that you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild, correct?
Yeah. That's a good question, too. Well, I'm a 30-year vested member, and they dropped my health insurance on me.
Really? Why did they do that?
Yeah. Well, because that happened a few years ago. I was in Mexico, didn't even know about it, couldn't even respond to it. And when I got home, I was canceled because I hadn't done anything in the industry for a couple of years. So they dropped my health insurance. It's a great story. Here's what happened on that. When I started working for RT, Russian television, they offered me full health insurance, but I had it through the union, and I had it because I'm also on, of course, on Medicare now. I'm old enough. And so I told them, no, I don't need it, because, again, I didn't want to deal with multiple health insurance companies. That can be a headache and a complete disaster, trust me. So I said, no, I don't need it. Well, then all of a sudden this happened to me. And my wife and I were faced. She isn't old enough quite yet to get Medicare. She's 4 years younger than me. So she would have no insurance whatsoever, and I would still have Medicare, but my Part B and all that would not be covered. So we thought, well, what do we do? Do we just buy private until, the union would give me back my full insurance if I went on retirement status. They were forcing me to retire. See, I haven't taken my retirement because it's growing and it's getting bigger, and I don't want to take it till age 70. I don't need it. So, so what happened was RT had offered me insurance. I thought, I'm going to call them. So I called the lady, explained what the union did to me. I said, I know I turned your insurance down. I said, is there any chance I could be reconsidered and get it back? She said, Governor, I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Well, she didn't, but she didn't have to. In 1 week, Blue Cross Blue Shield cards arrived for my wife and I.
Wow.
RT America, the Russians. gave me my health care when my 30-year union in America threw me off.
Well, it is crazy that they threw you off. I can't believe they did that.
Well, it kind of makes you scratch your head, don't it?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Here's another little tidbit. You know how they had that, and believe me, I love my country. I just don't love my government. But here's another little tidbit. You know, they had that big thing for Normandy this past year,
yep,
recognizing how many years and all that.
Right.
How come the Russians were not invited? They were our ally in World War II. Without them, we may not have won that war. And here's my point. They invited the Germans.
Jeez.
Wait a minute. My father landed at Normandy. My mom is a World War II veteran of North Africa. So here they are recognizing Normandy. Russia. My father talked about meeting the Russians in Berlin and the love affair between our GIs and the Russians when they met in Berlin. My father told me about that. And yet they dedicate Normandy and Russia doesn't receive an invite, but the Germans do?
It is really sad, and I think it's reflective of the new Cold War that we're unfortunately in. And actually, I did want to bring this back to the Green Party, because something that I broke on this show is when I actually had Howie Hawkins as a guest on the show last year. And during that interview, he made some kind of controversial statements. He said that Donald Trump did collude with Russia. He also mentioned that he advised Jill Stein not to go to the RT dinner back in 2015 because RT is Russian propaganda. He made some other comments about Julian Assange and about bad politics of him speaking with the Trump campaign.
But his politics in 2010, trying to give advice to Donald Jr. for the campaign, working with Trump, that's bad. I don't support that at all. I wouldn't, so that'd be my criticism of Julian Assange. Now, how much he speaks for the whole WikiLeaks organization? Probably does, because one of his defenses was that was on WikiLeaks, not him personally, but pretty much everybody understands it was him. And whether that was with the Russians, that I think is not documented. There's circumstantial evidence. Like, well, where are the WikiLeaks about, Putin? That's the Panama Papers. A lot of stuff came out about Putin and his wealth there. So that remains to be seen if he was working with the Russians or just biased with them. We'll see. I'm not sure. But he should not be prosecuted for publishing the leaks from Bradley Manning, or what's he call himself? Chelsea.
So do you think that it's right for the Green Party to be nominating somebody who says that Russia did meddle in the 2016 election, especially after everything that's happened to Jill Stein since 2016?
Well, Russia did meddle a little bit, but so do we. That's standard operating procedure. When I heard about but first let me back up. Remember this about the Democrats. Whenever the Democrats lose an election, they never accept the blame that Hillary ran a campaign. No, they have to find something else to blame. Like in 2000, when you had the same scenario, Al Gore won the popular, but George Bush won the electoral college, Florida, all the controversy, Bush gets in. Well, who did the Democrats then blame? They blamed Ralph Nader. I remember it well. Well, if all those people wouldn't have voted for Ralph, we'd have won. Well, we get to fast forward to 2016. Hillary runs a bad campaign. She is supposed to win, heavily favored. She gets beat. They need an excuse. Well, now they've convinced all the Democrats that Hillary would have won had Russia not interfered. And I came out and said, we should be thanking Russia for what they did. You want to know why? They showed us that the Democratic campaign and the party was completely fixed. That Bernie Sanders had no chance to win, that Hillary was going to get it no matter what, because of these super delegates and that nonsense. So to me, we should have been thanking the Russians for exposing the fraudulence of the Democratic Party so people are aware of that. But no, they used a standard, kill the messenger, not the message. So then it all focused on Russian interference. Oh, that's an act of war if you interfere. Well, I immediately found out the Carnegie Mellon Institute did a study from 1948 to 2010, so it doesn't even include the last 10 years. The United States has interfered, and this don't count coups d'etats either. The United States has interfered in 81 elections in 45 different countries. So who the hell are we to talk about interfering in elections? And so they took out, what, $200,000 of ads on the internet, whatever it was in the end? That's laughable. Hillary would spend that in a quarter of a day. I'll put it this way. I've never met one person, and I've asked a lot of people. I said, did you get influenced by the Russians in the 2016 election? I haven't found a person yet that said yes.
I guess my question is, though, considering what happened to Jill Stein following 2016, don't you think it would be an especially big mistake for the Green Party to be nominating somebody who says that Donald Trump did collude with Russia and that RT is Russian propaganda?
Well, I was part of an advisory group to Jill, and I advised her not to go to that RT thing.
Why?
And in fact, well, I thought it was a setup. RT is, Russian propaganda. There's a lot of good programming on it, and they don't really interfere with that. Chris Hedges, Larry King, I don't know if Larry's still on there, Tom Hartman. But there's also, when the news comes from central headquarters, they get all kinds of crazy conspiracy people on there. Old LaRouche people, the Lyndon LaRouche,
right.
Conspiracy people and others. So I didn't trust them. And actually another person said, they could take a picture that would just overshadow everything you say. And she thought she'd give a message. She was encouraged by a lot of people in the peace movement. So she went. And that picture, Putin, you said she sat down with Putin. No, Putin sat down at the table with her for just a few minutes.
Right.
Picture snapped. Flynn is there. She don't know Flynn. Nobody knows Flynn. And Putin leaves. And then Sputnik International, another state media, puts it out on the media. And then, what's their purpose? Divide us in this country, the liberals from the more radical elements. And then MSNBC, CNN, Fox put that picture out there, and a lot of print media, again and again and again. They're doing it for Russian propaganda. That was what the Russians wanted. I mean, it's so ironic. So, the media is, they're following this Russiagate thing, which I think is serious. I think Trump ought to be impeached. I think it's obvious he saw collusion. He did collude, him and his son and his son-in-law. And, it's all over that first volume of the Mueller report. It's all over there. I mean, when people say, oh, it showed no collusion. No, it didn't. It says, Mueller says right away, I didn't talk about collusion. I talked about narrow legal definition of conspiracy. Plus, I can't indict a president, according to this OLC letter in the Justice Department. He just laid out the evidence for prosecutors, which has to be Congress.
And Jill Stein should have gone to
okay, the Russian propaganda arm for RT, my response back to that would be, oh, you're saying that I work for the Russians? Yeah, I work for RT America, but I'll tell you what, I was also at that thing that Jill Stein was at.
Right.
And Putin was the keynote speaker. He came up to me at the end, walked over to me, called me governor, which two federal court judges that I was involved with in an official court case wouldn't even call me governor in their written summation. I was Ventura. But that aside, he called me governor. He said, and then assured me he would never interfere in my show in any way, shape, or form. I had complete control. I said to him, thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. And so far, he's been a man of his word. They've never told me what to talk about. They've never told me what I can or can't talk about. While here in the United States of America, I'm white bald. You notice I use the correct terminology now. I'm white bald here. because of my court case, the defamation case involved with Chris Kyle. I call him the American liar who defamed me. Well, as a result of that case, 32 media conglomerates came in on the Court of Appeals and got it overturned so that they could protect their right to put out fake news and not be held accountable financially for it. That was the underlying thing. Why? Well, how am I going to work for our media when 32 of them came in and opposed me in a court case that was none of their damn business? So my only alternative of employment, and I love to say this, Russian television gave me my free speech back. So for a candidate to say Russian television, RT, is a arm of the Kremlin, like I hear said, is utterly ridiculous. Larry King works there. So they're going to say that Larry King's an arm of the Kremlin? Rick Sanchez, the late Ed Schultz? These are all accredited journalists who've had enough of our journalism and have found a place where you can truly do it. And I'll back that up by saying we never do a pre-interview. Every one of these other medias, NBC, ABC, CNN, whatever it is, if they're going to have you on, they call you ahead of time to talk to you about and pose questions so they can guide the interview and know what you're going to say beforehand. RT's never done that. I have never done that with any guest. Pre-interviews. That's where you get control. I let the guests say, I list their credentials, let them give their opinion, and I leave it up to you, the listener. Do you want to accept this opinion, or do you think it's baloney? It's up to you. But I don't sit and try to manipulate so that I can control that guest to say what I want that guest to say. Never ever done that. I wouldn't do it. So for someone to say that RT, hey, PBS here is paid by our government. RT's now accepting ads. The minute they get over 51% in ads, then they can't be controlled by the Russian government anymore, can they?
That's true.
You know?
I mean, it is funny because they pretend as though corporate media isn't state media, but it really is. And if you look at a lot of these, companies that fund it, like Boeing and Raytheon, I mean, those are effectively wings of the government.
Yeah, let me give you this one. I'm a governor. I'm a mayor. I'm an honorably discharged Vietnam veteran, and I've paid taxes to this country for over 50 years of my life. And do you know, with my RTID, I am banned from the floor of Congress?
Really?
Yeah. Now, where's our media on that? Where is our media defending our First Amendment rights at RT? They're quiet, aren't they?
Absolutely.
They don't say a word about it, do they? Well, of course, we're a competitor. And what a nice way to eliminate a competitor. Government collusion, can't get into anything. You're cut off from press conferences. You're not allowed to go to them. They don't do that to any other. Even Al Jazeera gets in. But not RT.
And it's sad, too, because I think if you were to run for president this year, I think that they would target you in the same way that they did to Jill Stein. They would probably bring up the fact that you were at that 2015 RT dinner. I don't know if any pictures exist of that, but they would probably blast that everywhere. And I believe there was actually even a Washington Post article where they were alluding to the fact you might be a Russian agent or something like that, right?
You know how I'd counter that laughingly? I'd counter that. I'd look right at the media and say, oh, really? So I'm supposed to learn about Russia from you?
Right.
And I'd burst out laughing and say, from your propaganda? I'm just doing this so I can learn myself. What better way to learn about the Russians than to, somewhat work for them? Doesn't mean you're now a Russian agent or anything of the sort. It's the most nonsense. I'd laugh that off. Say, look at my record. I served my country. Now all of a sudden I don't. I'm in the spirit of Adams and Jefferson, who said you're supposed to put your country under the magnifying glass. You're supposed to be a vigilant citizen. You're supposed to hold their feet to the fire or you're going to get bad government. There's a pretty good answer for it, isn't it?
I did just want to ask one other question about the Green Party primaries, because something else
Sure.
that the candidates have been complaining about is that people who are backing Howie Hawkins have been using their positions in the Green Party to kind of interpret rules in his favor. There's one party membership rule, for example. There's another about collecting signatures. And his campaign manager last year actually made a statement about you on Facebook when there was an article about, or a post about you potentially running. She said, quote, "For the record, I think the idea of having this person on our GP presidential ticket is asinine, and I will oppose any move to try to get him considered as a candidate for nomination," end quote. So, I mean, how do you feel about the prospect of people using their influence in the Green Party to keep you from even participating in the process?
Well, it's sad. And it shows that the Green Party doesn't stand for what they're telling people that they do, I guess. And if that's the way they feel, then I certainly made the right decision, didn't I?
Well, again, I think
because the point being is, if you're going to take on the Democrats and Republicans, you can't have, when I took them on with the Independence Party of Minnesota, here, I'll give you an observation that I've noticed now. I think running for office now is being done simply for job creation. Because what they do now, they bring in all of these donations and then they divvy them up to all the workers, and they all got jobs and they all get paid. And it's all part of a big systematic thing of creating a job, of getting elected, and that's why they don't really give a damn if they win or lose. They got the job of being able to make money for that period of time. Case in point, my election in Minnesota. Did you know we only had one person that got paid? That was my late campaign manager, Doug Friedline. He left the private sector to do that full time, so we felt we should pay him his equivalent salary. Nobody else on my campaign received a dime, including myself. One person got paid because we ran a campaign on ideas, not money. And that was one of the distasteful things I saw, that it seemed to be this whole idea of running was to see how many people jump on board and get on the payroll when the dough starts rolling in. It's all about raising money. How much can you raise, and how much revenue can you bring in, and then you can have a huge campaign staff, and they're all on the payroll, and everybody makes money, and it's a job. Am I off base on that?
No, I don't think so. And, Governor, I think a lot of people, even in the Green Party and outside the Green Party, would love to see you run, just because you represent really what a lot of people out there are thinking. And I also think it would be hard for Democrats to say that you were a spoiler, because I think that, a lot of Trump supporters would support you too, especially for your anti-war positions. So, is there any chance that you might consider, and whether it's in the Green Party or outside the Green Party, that you may decide to run in November?
Well, the big problem is ballot access. I'd love to run with no party, personally, but how do you get ballot access? They got different things in every state. There's something we need. If it's a federal office, ballot access should be uniformly set federally. And if you comply in every state to the federal rules, you should be on the ballot. But instead, this is a way to keep third parties from rising up. You make them jump through separate hoops in every state. So I would love to run as Jesse Ventura with my candidate. No political party. None. That would be my first choice, to run without a political party at all, and give the people the opportunity to elect someone that belongs to no political party. I think on that alone you could win, or do very well.
Couldn't you just run a write-in campaign? At least people would be... Now? Couldn't you just announce that you are running and have people write you in?
You can do that, and this would probably be the year to do it, because so much of the election is going to be mail-in ballots, and if you can sit at home at the kitchen table, it's easy to write someone's name in, and in fact, I'll tell you right now, we'll do it right here. Yeah, I'm running for president. What I mean by that is, there ain't no candidate for me, so I'm going to write myself in. That's what I'm doing. I've already come to that decision. Since there's no candidate out there and any of the parties or any of anything that satisfies my personal need, then I still want to vote. I still want to exercise my constitutional right, so I will be writing myself in for president. Now, I'm being clear. That doesn't mean I've opened the door to a candidacy. But I will say this. If it ends up, if we can overcome Trump on the write-ins, which there shouldn't be a problem. You know, this guy, how do you think the military votes every year if you're deployed?
Right.
You know, we've been doing write-in ballots for hundreds of years, and so he's saying that all the military ballots are fraudulent? Is that what he's telling us, that there's great fraud amongst the military when they vote if they're deployed overseas? The point being is, this election is going to be a lot of write-in, a lot of it. And that makes it better for a write-in candidate to win, because you're not pressured. If you're sitting at home at your kitchen table and you're going to mail it, how much time does it take you to write in a name? Not very long. But when you go to a polling place, it's more difficult because they're shuttling you through like cattle at McDonald's.
Right, that's true.
So, you know, it is the year for the write-in. This would be the best year ever for a write-in. And well, put it this way, I'll open up and give you this. If America writes me in and I win, well, then I guess I have to do the job, don't I?
Absolutely, and I think there are millions and millions of people out there who would like to write your name on the ballot for president.
Then that's as simple as it gets. If I win on which I'm laughing because if I win, I'm serious though. If America writes me in and I win, I'll do the job.
Awesome, that's great news.
I don't think I would have any choice. I would have to. How could I walk away from that? Jeez, when Muhammad Ali sent me the gloves, signed, "Dear Governor Ventura, you shocked the world, Muhammad Ali." If I win on a write-in, I believe Muhammad may rise from the dead.
Well, again, Governor, I think that's
how much I admire him. And if there's one person that could do it, it'd be him.
Again, Governor, I think there are millions of people out there who would love to write your name and people who are otherwise apathetic. I mean, half the people don't even vote anymore. And I think if they knew Jesse Ventura is receptive to being a write-in candidate, I think they would write your name in at least as a protest vote against these two terrible candidates that we have in Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Well, I just put on the record with you, and I'll stand by it. If I win, I'm sorry, it makes me kind of chuckle, but if I win on a write-in, I'll do the job. How could I not?
Wonderful.
How could you possibly say no? I couldn't. So I guess I'll start looking for a running.
Who have you considered anybody as a running mate? Because I think there are.
Oh yeah, of course I have.
I mean, I know you mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'll tell you who people. Of course, I mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You know, and getting Robert to commit now is hard. You know, it's a difficult thing, and especially to leave the Democrats. But I would certainly entertain him. I love Cynthia McKinney. You know, I love Cynthia because she's got guts. You can't intimidate her.
Absolutely.
And, that's what I love about her. Chelsea Gabbard, the military girl, who's opposed to these regime change wars. I stand with her 100% on that. Opposed to them, regime changing wars. They're ridiculous. It's colonialism. And she would make a great running mate. There's a lot of good people out there. Preferably to win. Here's the fun one. If I went out to truly win, everybody laughed at me a couple of years ago. I said I wanted Howard Stern, and everybody laughed. Oh, that's funny. I was serious, and I'll tell you why. Howard Stern could raise you more money than anyone. Plus, Sirius Radio isn't governed by the FCC, so you could run your entire campaign on his show every day right up to the election. And How much? If you told the Howard Stern listeners to go out and get 10 people to vote for us, you don't think they would? Of course they would. And then here's the most important thing of the deal: is you need a vice president who's so despicable that they won't kill you and put him in.
Yeah.
You know, so you need someone. Then Howard Stern would fit that perfect. The problem was Howard wouldn't do it, so I now call him laughingly. He's still a great friend, but I call him laughingly Hampton Howard now because he's been won over because he lives in the Hamptons. If this would have been the Howard of 30 years ago, he'd have did it.
He does seem like kind of he's become sort of in that establishment
He's
liberal
Hampton
vein.
Howard, man. He's got the good life. He's Hampton Howard. I still commend him. He's out saving animals, he and his wife, and all that. Kudos to him. Good job done, Howard. But if it would have been the Howard of 30 years ago, I'd have had my running mate. And also, he keeps you clean on money. Can you imagine if he said to his listeners, we need $50 from all of you? Well, that saves me from having to sell out, and I can still maintain and not take any special interest money.
Makes sense.
See, people need to understand there's always a method to Jesse's madness.
I think we all know that by now.
I hope so. But no, I was dead serious about Stern. He would be the perfect running mate for me, not for anyone else, but for me, because he fulfills everything I would need to win. I mean, can you imagine having his radio show right up till Election Day?
Yeah,
that's
true.
Power, man. And I would, what I would do now to tempt him to get him on board with me if I ran?
What?
Here's what I'd do now. I'd say, Howard, if you support me, completely raise money for me and do all that, when I win, I will make you the head of the FCC.
That would be pretty awesome, actually.
That might tempt him, but here's the deal that would be good on it. Howard, everyone would think, oh, my goodness, there goes Howard. The FCC is going to stand for nothing. All you're going to hear is swear words over the radio now, blah, 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 right? No. You have Howard come in and he cracks down worse than ever. And you know why he does that? Because then everyone will get kicked off. They won't want to listen to that type of radio. They'll listen to Sirius, and Howard will make more money. By cracking down on regular radio, it'll push all the normal people over to Sirius where you got to pay for it. Well, Howard's part owner of the thing, I think. So he'd make more money. That's how you do it in the typical Democrat way or Republican way. The payola. Howard, I'll make you the head of the FCC.
I'm curious, there was somebody else who was running this year who a lot of young people got excited about, and that's former Senator Mike Gravel. There's actually a whole side story there, too, with him and Howie Hawkins, because something that happened was a campaign came out with Mike Gravel's name on it, asking people to donate to Howie Hawkins. When I had Mike Gravel on the show, he said that he didn't even know who Howie Hawkins was. But something else I wanted to ask you about today was Howie Hawkins. Are you endorsing him?
No, I don't know much about him, and so I haven't endorsed anybody else in that regard.
Do you know who Howie Hawkins is?
Well, he sent me some emails, but I haven't read them. I've just been so busy with so many emails that I get. So, to my knowledge, no, I haven't endorsed him, and I don't know what he represents in that regard.
Okay, because there was an email that went out from your campaign or addressed from your campaign that was asking people to donate to the Howie Hawkins campaign. Did you know about that email?
No, I didn't. And you have to understand that my campaign was run by teenagers, and on a couple of occasions they can endorse who they want as individuals. But they don't necessarily bind me on any endorsements in that regard.
But when I had him on again later, he said that he was very supportive of you. He thought that you would be a great candidate.
With respect to Jesse, I respect him. I think he's a very interesting person and has taken some very interesting positions So I would not. I think that if he were to jump into the green race, he would have an edge because he is nationally known as a political figure and a progressive figure. And I've recognized that he, like others, have called for a new commission to look into, not a political commission, I might say, to look into the 9/11, because that's when all of this perpetual war locked in, and that was because the neocons. And so who are the beneficiaries of 9/11? It obviously was the neocons in the military-industrial complex. Now, I could go into some of the details about Building 7 and others, but suffice it to say that if you really have a skepticism and a suspicion, all you got to do is follow the money. Who benefited from 9/11? Not the American people by any stretch of the imagination. Who benefited was the military-industrial complex and the neocons who were its advocates.
Do you know who Mike Gravel is, and would you consider him as a running mate?
The name kind of rings a bell, but I'm not real familiar with him.
He read the Pentagon Papers into the public record when he was a senator. He also ran for president in 2008.
Okay. But no, if I were, I'd be open. You just got to make sure that the person that you pick is qualified for the top job if something happens to you. It really comes down to being that simple. You pick, you try to make it a strategic pick, certainly, something that can help get you both elected. Like, having a female is always smart now, and a Cynthia McKinney where you have a black female who's certainly qualified.
Yeah, I think Cynthia McKinney would be a great choice. She actually was the Green Party nominee in 2008, so I think that she would be a wonderful running mate. I think a lot of people would love to have her on the ticket with you.
Yeah. By the way, for all of you out there, I don't know if you know this, but I was out in Aspen, Colorado a couple years ago, and you had a Republican there, you had a Democrat there, and you had me, the independent, there, and all three of us got along great. The Republican was Ron Paul, and the Democrat was Dennis Kucinich.
There you go.
And the three of us got along great. We didn't agree on everything, but it was a wonderful time out there with them. And Dennis Kucinich paid me the greatest compliment at the end of we had dinner together last night, and he looked at me and said, "Jesse Ventura," he said, "you are the greatest free spirit I have ever met in my life."
That's quite a compliment.
Oh, coming from Dennis Kucinich, I took that as the best compliment I'd received in a long while. Because that's what I am. I am a free spirit.
Absolutely. And again, I think that goes back to why you've led such an interesting life, because you are such a free spirit, and you seem to say yes to pretty much every opportunity that comes up.
Well, it's like I said, I follow Yogi Berra. You come to the Y in the road and you take it. But do you take the right one? Who knows? But once you make the commitment and do take it, you take it. And so it's as simple as that. But yeah, like I said, I'll say it on your show today. If I could win a write-in, if they write in and you win, how could you possibly not accept it?
Absolutely.
You couldn't. You'd have to accept it. There'd be no choice in the matter.
Well, Governor, I don't know if you have a few minutes left. I do have some questions from my patrons. Patrons of the show can submit questions to the guests, so I don't know if I could just ask you a few. One says, what would be your first act if you were elected president, and where would you primarily focus your attentions as president?
Well, my first act would be to accept that big, huge Department of Defense bill, all the $850 billion or whatever they've decided, because my first act would be to go to war. Now let me explain the war. I would take that big defense bill, and I'd take about $200 billion of it, and instead of buying aircraft carriers and rockets and all these things that destroy mankind, I would take it, and have you seen those machines that clean up the ocean?
I actually haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, my God, they're unbelievable. They're like big, huge tractors, and they drive them into the ocean, and it picks up all the plastic and all the crap, the garbage that we've put into the ocean.
That sounds awesome.
It's amazing. You need to see these things. I would spend $200 billion on these, which would create a huge amount of jobs making them. So you'd fill in for the war machine needs jobs. That's why it exists. And then I would take the more money, and train the United States Navy how to use them. And we would start a war on cleaning up our oceans around our country.
That's a wonderful idea.
And I think that because we need to do that, and I'll tell you why. I live down on the Baja, 850 miles down the Baja, and I live off the grid down there. I live an hour from pavement and an hour from electricity. And my wife and I walk the beach down there in the evenings a lot, walking our dog. And the beaches are so isolated, you could probably walk them naked. No one would say anything because there's not enough people around to say anything. And but every night that we come back, usually our front pockets are full of plastic.
Really? Jeez.
And it's not plastic from people throwing a Coke bottle on the beach. It's plastic that's been regurgitated from the ocean, and it's being spewed back up on us like the ocean is telling us, keep your own garbage, I don't want it. Because you have to look at this stuff when you first see it, and you go, what is this? And it's probably been in salt water for who knows how long, so you don't identify it right away as plastic, but then all of a sudden you realize that's what it is. And they've discovered in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that the currents have pushed together all the plastic, that there's a thing out there the size of Texas.
Right.
Of plastic. And I got news for the people of this country. It ain't the Russians that are going to kill us. It ain't the Chinese that are going to kill us. We're all going to kill ourselves, because right now we're polluting our way into total destruction. You think that pollution doesn't play a role in this pandemic? Of course it does.
Well, I'm sure Rachel Maddow would say that the pollution is a result of the Russians. I'm sure she'd figure out a way to tie that back.
Well, the thing about all of that is simple. It affects all of us. Pollution doesn't know countries.
Right.
And it doesn't know borders. So that, getting back to your original question, that would be one of the first things we would do, is start a war on cleaning up our ocean. And then when we're done with our ocean, maybe we can rent ourselves out to other countries throughout the world, and we can go there and do it for them too.
That's a great idea.
Rather than being over there with our aircraft carriers and our weapons of destruction threatening them.
Right. Then people might actually want us to come to their country.
Now, internationally, what I would do right away, I would end the embargo against Cuba, and I would try to renegotiate with Iran, and I would end the embargo against Venezuela.
All great ideas.
Well, there you card and see what's a couple of things I'd do if I was elected.
Well, Governor, most of the people, most of my patrons here, they just are saying they're supportive of you running. Derek wanted you to know that the people of Nevada would like to vote for you. Janet was wanting you to run. One other question I did have says, what is your opinion on the left's dependency on social and corporate media for our communication? Why do right-wingers have their own TV channels and alternative ways of reaching young people and other key constituencies, while the left is stuck in Mark and Jack's feeds?
I don't think they all are. Tom Hartman's as left as you can get. I watch Tom occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
He's on for a few hours at noon every day, and I don't watch him all the time, but I know him and respect him a great deal. I think the left has their way out there, and so do the right. The point of the matter is what we should all be questioning.
Right.
And that is this. What happened to our media, and let me explain what has happened. You know what the downfall of our mainstream media was? The show 60 Minutes.
Why do you say that?
Well, here's why. It was a phenomenal show. It exposed a lot of things that needed exposing. It was well done. But here's the problem. It was a news show, and up until that show came out, all the networks in that took losses in the news department with the idea that we have the job of informing the public. We'll make it up in the entertainment division. Whatever we lose in providing this information, we'll make it up in the entertainment division. That was the standard on all the networks back then. Well, what 60 Minutes did, all of a sudden 60 Minutes shot to #1 on the charts. Well, guess what? The light went off with the bean counters, and they went, whoa, you mean we can make money with the news? You mean if we can turn the news into entertainment too? Wow, will we bring in a lot of dough? And so that 60 Minutes, as great as it was, the flip side of it, it showed them you could make money off glamorizing news shows and not worry about the truth in the end. It all comes down to how much money did we make. We'll correct it tomorrow if we need to. But it's all about making money today. So you had virtually the news department sell out to the almighty dollar. What they do now, everything is done in mainstream simply to satisfy advertisers so you can make more money.
That makes sense.
And in my opinion, 60 Minutes caused that because it was a great show, but it shot to #1 on the charts. Every week, 60 Minutes was first, second, third, and that's what they operate off of.
That does make sense.
That's what's great. Well, that's what's great about RT. When I'm at RT, I don't even know what my numbers are because they're not brought up. No one cares. We're like a PBS here. If you're getting a chunk of, like we get from the Russian government the same way as PBS gets a chunk of money from our government. Well, then you don't have to worry about ratings points. You can actually do the news because you're really not concerned, or you want people to watch, and you want them to choose to watch to be informed. But you're not doing it on the basis of selling ad time, which is what I don't like. They're forcing RT to do so that we can get access. They're forcing us to sell ads. I actually liked it better when we didn't have any.
Well, Governor, I know that we're almost out of time. I did have just one last question, if you don't mind, because I kind of neglected asking you last time you were on. The first question I asked you last time you were on the show is if there was any missed opportunity that you ever had, and you talked about how Hunter S. Thompson had invited you to his house and you didn't get to go. I did just want to ask about that because there is actually conspiracy theory, and I know that you had the TV show Conspiracy Theories. I did want to ask about, there was a conspiracy theory about Hunter S. Thompson and his suicide because Hunter S. Thompson, shortly before he died, he was speaking about how he thought 9/11 may have been an inside job, and just really a lot of that sort of rhetoric against the Bush administration about how they were Nazis and fascists.
You sort of wonder when something like that happens, well, who stands to benefit? Fake murder. Who had the opportunity and the motive? You just kind of look at these basic things. And I don't know if I want to go into this on worldwide radio here, but...
you might as well.
All right. Well, what the hell? I saw that the U.S. government was going to benefit, and the White House people, the Republican administration, to take the mind of the public off of the crashing economy. I don't assume that I know the truth about what went on that day. And, yeah, I just look around and looking for, well, who had the motive, who had the opportunity, who had the equipment, who had the will. Yeah, these people were looting the treasury, and they knew the economy was going to a spiral downward. Bush, he's really the evil one in here, and they're more than just him. But we're the Nazis in this game, and I don't like it. I'm embarrassed and I'm pissed off. Yeah, and I mean to say something, and I think a lot of people in this country agree with me. I look a lot more than saying anything. Well, we'll see what happens to me if if I get my head cut off next week by it's always unknown or bushy-haired strangers who commit suicide right afterwards. No witnesses. That's a new kind of crime.
Was that the CIA kind of crime?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that'd be anybody's successful criminal's kind of crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. No witnesses, no records. We can go on and on. And I have to be restrained on this subject.
I'm just wondering, have you heard of that conspiracy theory that Hunter S. Thompson may have actually been suicided? And do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I really don't. I believe he did. I heard the word that I got was that he had medical difficulties to the point that apparently he was on the road to dying anyway. And so he just chose to do it in his own way, and he chose to do it. That's all I know about it. That he did that. The old Frank Sinatra or whatever. I did it my way, and I don't disrespect anybody that so chooses to do that. It's their life. If they're faced with something that is going to kill them anyway, I have friends in the Navy SEAL community who have done that. They were faced with a cancer that would have been extremely monetarily destructive to their families, and they just chose another way out of saving their families the heartache and destruction of what cancer can do. And I won't say names or anything of that sort, but it's a sad situation, but it's something that if someone chooses to, that's their choice. I don't hold it against them at all if that's what they want to do, ultimately. But no, I do have one other regret.
What's that?
And that one comes to not seeing one too. When I went to Cuba, Fidel Castro invited me to come back and to bring my family, as his guest. And I'm really ticked off that I never followed up on that. And of course, now Fidel's gone. But I would have really enjoyed to have gone down there because he told me next time you come here as my guest, you bring your wife and you bring your children with you.
I'm sure the Cuban government would still want to have you as a guest, though, wouldn't they?
Oh, they probably would, I'm sure, but that ain't the same as being able to sit down with Fidel.
Yeah, sure.
Believe me, I got to do it for an hour, and it's one of the most vivid memories I have that will remain that way till they plant me. And, because Fidel Castro has been infamous since whatever it was, about 58, when all that occurred down there, and he survived and died of natural causes, and that's quite a feat considering how the U.S. government, how many times they attempted to assassinate him.
Absolutely, dozens and dozens of times. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And why are we allowed to do that? I've always wondered that. How come we're allowed to go out and assassinate other leaders?
I don't know. It seems criminal to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. But they tell you that's the operating procedure of that type of warfare in our intelligence community, and I find that very disturbing.
Well, Barack Obama assassinated U.S. citizens when he was president with drones.
I know.
A 16-year-old American.
Absolutely, I know. And I find it just astounding that also that Congress has given up the war powers, that the president can now take you to war anytime he feels like it.
Right, and while these Democrats are protesting Trump, they're giving him expanded military power, spying powers, and expanding the military budget, and it seems like they couldn't be bigger supporters of him if they tried.
Yeah, well, it is, because they're all on board with the war machine, The worst thing you can be is, I'll look at it this way. Who dies violent in our country in the last, going back to the 60s? Everybody that stood for peace, starting with John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was not going to go in Vietnam. He didn't go into Cuba, and he was starting détente with the Russians, and they killed him. And then you had Bobby Kennedy, who ran on a total peace platform at the time of getting us out of Vietnam. They killed Bobby. And then you got Dr. Martin Luther King, who, of course, marched and said Vietnam War was wrong, and Dr. King was extremely anti-war. He got killed, too. Then you fast forward to 1980, coming back out of retirement, the top peacenik in the world, John Lennon, Give Peace a Chance, sung at every rally throughout the world. Then he got killed too, didn't he? It's very interesting how every who stands for peace dies violently with a gun.
It's all a coincidence.
Oh, yeah. If they're all lone nuts. That's all just coincidence and lone nuts.
Well, Governor, I really do appreciate you being back on the show, and I appreciate your announcement that you're receptive to being a write-in candidate. So, and just to be clear about that, as being receptive as a write-in candidate, that means that you're not going to be endorsing any other party's candidate for president, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm not going to endorse anybody. And in fact, all I'm saying is there's no candidate for me right now, so I'll be voting for myself.
Wonderful. Well, Governor,
now I don't want that I want to be clear on this. I am not an official candidate because I don't want to lose my job and health insurance.
Right.
But if people write me in, I can't do nothing about that. I'm not on the ballot. So
that's true.
I think that gets me off the hook. As far as being able to keep my job.
And again, Governor, I think...
By the way, one last thing. Do you know why RT was put on the list for interfering in the 2016 elections?
I think probably just because they have an alternative view from the corporate media.
No, because we held debates for the third-party candidates, like the Green Party, the Libertarian, the Constitution. They viewed that as interfering in the election.
Well, it is in a way, isn't it? It's interfering with the duopoly.
Like I said, I guess I interfered in the election in '98 when I ran and won. A third party interfered in the election system. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll do it again.
Thank you, Governor. I really do appreciate your time, and hopefully we can have you back at some point in the future.
All right. Very good. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Governor. Take care.